Well,
She should have been here at like 9 something.
yep, and we are live. So if you just want to give me a second, I'm getting everything prefaced right now, getting everything up to date, making sure we got this. Edit video, and let's go ahead and add some tags. Oh no, yeah, why not? Then we'll do latest news. We'll do yo. We got some people in here. What's up, yo? Talk to me.
Hello.
Are we live, buddy, or
Yeah,
what's going
yeah.
on?
Yes, we are.
Yep.
Okay, well, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the second episode of the Paradox Collective. I can hear myself somewhere.
PC Zarko, what up, my dude?
Anyway, so
Chucky, what up, my dude?
tonight we've got a really special subject we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about aliens, guys. So what are aliens? Some people think they're, of course, little green men. Some people think they're time travelers. Some people think they're from a different dimension. Um, we've had so many different encounters with them over, history. Some people think
Mm-hmm.
we had encounters with them. Even some people think aliens built the pyramids. Some of the great
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna
wonders of
say
the
that.
world here. Some people think that aliens put us here on this planet. Some people think that um, the core of the Bible, chariots of fire, is aliens, and that the gods are aliens. Some people don't believe in them at all. Um,
Oh.
Especially recently, one of the reasons why we're going over this subject is because recently we've had a lot of upticks in not so much maybe you could say alien encounters or UFO encounters, but just disclosures in general. Uh, Apparently, we're finding out now that you can pretty much Google it now that they're disclosing that UFOs are real. Of course, that
Yep.
doesn't necessarily mean aliens are real. It doesn't mean anything, specifically about aliens in the classic sense of the word for little green men. But it does mean that either, we're either gearing up towards something that could be very interesting, some type of first contact thing, or it could be, as some other people think, something like Project Bluebeam, where the government is going to manufacture a fake alien invasion or fake alien sighting in order to, kind of push their agenda towards whatever that may be. So tonight we're gonna crack into this subject. We've got a special guest on tonight. Her name is Liz. She'll be on in a little while here. She's gonna tell us about her encounter. So there's different kinds of encounters. I'm gonna shift gears real quick. So you have, close encounters of the first kind. Now that's a visual sighting of an unidentified object.
Mm-hmm.
According to Wikipedia, it's something seemingly less than 500 feet away, 150 meters away. Um, Something that you can see, something that shows details. Now, of course, a close encounter of the second kind is a UFO event in which a physical effect is alleged. Now, this can be interference with the functioning of a vehicle or electronic device, animals reacting, a physiological effect such as paralysis or heat or discomfort in the witness, or some physical trace like impressions in the ground, scorched or otherwise affected vegetation, or a chemical trace. That's, of course, once again, according to, Wikipedia. Now, close encounters of the third kind, obviously, that's the one that, gives everybody's chills. That's UFOs. That's UFO encounters in which an animated entity is present. Those include humanoids, robots, and humans who seem to be the occupants or pilots of the UFO. So, of course, that's if you actually see an entity, you know. Now, we can even take a little bit of a deeper dive. We can talk about close encounters of the fourth kind. I know, this is something we're going to try to be looking towards, possibly talking to somebody in the future. And of course, that's an abduction.
Mm.
Close encounter of the fourth kind is a UFO event in which a human is abducted by a UFO or its occupants. Um, this is something that's a little bit less traditional. Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, Close Encounter, which involves direct communication between humans or aliens, or Close Encounters of the Sixth Kind, which is death of something, like they consider like cow mutilations,
I was about to say cow mutilations,
stuff
right?
like
Yeah.
that, channeling entities, intrusion or parasitic attachment by extraterrestrial consciousness. And I believe this would include what we've heard a lot about. I'm sure some people have, where people are finding things implanted in themselves, like in their brain, in their neck, in their ear, tiny little microchips, something like that. And then there's also Close Encounters of the Seventh. We're not really going to talk about that because it's kind of more ridiculous. That says creation of an alien human hybrid. So we're not even going to get into really that, like how they do that or whatever. That's a little bit beyond my realm of
Well, wouldn't
of
that
how
go?
far I'll go.
Wouldn't
how far
that
I'll
go
bleed.
hand? Wouldn't that go hand in hand with an abduction? Like we don't know if we're abducted by an alien, and if we were abducted by an alien and they were producing all these tests and doing all these things to us, wouldn't that would go hand in hand with that, wouldn't it?
Well, no, that's like specifically the seventh kind means like basically reproduction or hybridization with human and alien. So that would be either you're fucking an alien or whatever, or you're they're grafting DNA together, stuff like that.
I'm sure there's somebody out there that has experienced something similar to that, and hopefully maybe we can get him as a guest on this show one day.
That'd be interesting. I'd be
That
interested in
would.
meeting somebody who plowed an alien. If
Be
that's
awesome.
a thing. Like I wouldn't. I'd be very very skeptical, of course. I mean, I'm not gonna just jump in and believe them off the top, but I mean, I'd be interested in talking to somebody who
Yeah, and just so the
alleged
viewers
that they did
just so
that.
the viewers at home are aware, everyone that's going to be a guest on our show has been pre-interviewed, and we made sure that the story had some validity to it. It wasn't we just talked to somebody for 5 minutes and we brought them on the show because we thought it was going to sound cool or whatever the case is. We've done our interviews with them. We've vetted out the possible candidates to be a guest on our show. So
And in the future, we might get some crazy people on here, just depending on like if people have a message, just because they're crazy doesn't mean they shouldn't be allowed to say it. Like we're not
all
gonna
right.
be starting any cults on the Paradox Collective, But
No, I wouldn't be.
huh. What do you think, Brian? What do you think about?
About aliens in general?
Yeah, give your 2 cents.
I believe I'm hopeful. I'm in my rational scientific brain. The universe is way too big for us to be the only floating rock with a certain amount of certain circumstances for us to inhabit it. Yeah, I mean, if they're out there, I hope that they're out there. I believe that they're out there, that they are advanced and they mean well. I know there's people that may have stories of terror and fear and
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff, but I truly believe
I
that
truly
if they're out there, things are
I think
peaceful.
that. I mean, I've thought about this. I think maybe there's stuff around or whatever, and like you said, there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of. We talked about this maybe last week a little bit. Remember we talked to one of our other guests.
Janelle, I haven't. Let me ask them if they have. Give me 1 second.
Sightings and stuff like that around, wars, nuclear test sites, things like that. So I think it's
Right.
George, what's up, man? We're about to have our first guest on. Has a close encounter of the second kind. So hopefully it's gonna be a really good
That's an
story.
interesting question.
We're gonna do like a question and answer
that
type deal.
because there's some people that believe that there's no such thing as aliens, that they're just
Right.
demons.
So somebody in my chat just said, "Do we know? Have you ever heard about Bob Lazar and Stephen Greer?"
Yeah,
Lazar.
we've heard about Bob Lazar.
Yeah.
This is and he had his.
I like Bob Lazar personally. I don't know if you guys.
I've watched a lot of.
dove
I've
into
watched
that
a
a
couple
little bit,
different
but-
interviews with Bob Lazar, and some of the stuff seems interesting, and then some of the stuff I don't know. Then it seems like recently he might have been vindicated a little bit based on some of the other stuff that's coming out in the public now. There was a point in time, I believe, that even like with Bob Lazar, people didn't even believe any of it. They thought he was full of ass and the stuff he was saying. And now with more of the mainstream, we're seeing. Here's the thing that I see too: we're seeing the mainstream media pick this shit up, and they're talking about it, they're running with it.
Yeah.
And a couple things are happening. Number one, people don't seem to care.
Right.
You
So
know?
that's what somebody just said in my chat. They said, "Here's what I need to know. We all believe they exist. We all believe they are intelligent. We all believe that where they come from. So why the secrecy? Why does the government not want us to know who they are, what they want, etc.? What's the secret, I wonder?"
Well, and here that's very interesting because like you think it's a weird one. Like for instance, with the flat, I'll liken it almost like the flat earthers, right? Like with flat Earth, like they people believe this shit passionately. They come up with all these theories. They have fucking demonstrations and shit, right? But at the end of the day, it's a conspiracy theory, right? And I'm like, what is what's the end the end around, like, you know, like with 9/11, you know, oh, there's conspiracy theories because, you know, the government this and that, the Patriot Act, and they stole the cash money, the billions that were underneath it or whatever.
Right.
So there's that behind it. But with the
Yep.
flat earth, it's like what's the motivation behind the conspiracy? What's to keep us in the dark about the earth being flat? Who really cares, you know?
Yeah.
So like with aliens, it's the same thing. It's like,
I
all
think
right,
it was
well,
more
let's
of like
do
our government trying to protect us at one point, but now in this day and age, they don't need to protect us. We can protect ourselves.
I mean, if people are coming across the galaxy, we probably can't protect ourselves.
Greed, money, and power.
But
They don't just want the world to know.
That's a good point.
you know, at the end of the day, who
The
knows?
black budget.
You know,
Do
like
you
I
know
said,
what the
the
black
thing
budget
that-
is? Do you know what the black budget is?
It's the black book.
No, the black budget.
No, what is the black
So,
budget?
all right, so somebody responded to that previous question about why don't we know anything, and they said greed, money, and power. They know, they just don't want
This is
the
shit I was
world to
talking
know,
about, by the way.
which is why they put a lot of fake shit out there on purpose. Steve Greer is really good at explaining the black budget.
So, anyways, I don't know why they would. I mean, obviously they would hide it. The initial thing was they want to hide it from panic and this and that, and they're worried about religious nuts going crazy because they think that would prove that there's no God, and they think the world would just, you know, pretty much fall into chaos. I don't think it would actually necessarily happen like that, but like I said, in my opinion, I'm leaning more towards what is it? The thing I was talking about earlier, the Project Bluebeam. Where it's
Explain
more
that
like,
a
I
little
don't
bit.
know. Could you?
Okay,
Yeah,
so-
I don't know that.
Yeah, can you explain
So
Project
I'm
Bluebeam?
not. I don't know a million things about Project Bluebeam, but basically it has something to do with. Let me see if I can find something that'll kind of make it really
Everybody
easy for
that's
me to
in
kinda
this
explain
right
it real
now,
quickly.
I need you guys to
has
go ahead
some
and
shit
like
on,
and share this. I want
a
as
lot of the
many
stuff is
people
kinda
in here
weird.
giving
A
me
lot of the
as
stuff
much
it's
information
it's
as
a
possible.
conspiracy theory, and a lot of the stuff is weird, and it's hard to sometimes find stuff on it. Because it's, you know, it's like the normal media times, dude. People they suppress this stuff. Well, basically, Project
Yeah, Janelle,
Bluebeam.
he was
Is it
just talking about that.
Go ahead.
Is it Project
No.
Blue Book? Or
Yeah.
Project
Bluebeam.
Bluebeam.
So basically, Project Bluebeam is we all know or have heard of, quote unquote, the New World Order and stuff like that. And the people that
Yeah,
actually control
everybody's heard of
everything.
it.
So basically, Project Bluebeam is supposed to be a way for the government and NASA and DARPA to basically use possibly like holograms or videos projected into like the sky to basically fake an alien invasion.
Interesting.
So, and this is it's hard, like the basic stuff in it is basically that DARPA or whoever has the power to actually do stuff like this to project things in the sky.
Mhm.
Right?
But like the problem is that it's like any other thing with conspiracy theories, to where sometimes fiction or sometimes truth can be stranger than fiction. You know, with for instance,
Absolutely.
like a lot of the stuff, like if you go back to the original, you know, 6 years ago, the Q stuff, that was original Q stuff, where like, hey man, well they're doing spirit cooking, and they're you know, sacrificing children and all this stuff, and they're pulling adrenal
Bohemian
glands out-
Gardens.
that weird shit, right? And then you're
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, that's crazy. That's but then
Yeah.
we find out 5 or 10 years later that they're doing these things, right? Like it's like who knows what the fuck
Exactly,
was actually
Janelle.
going
That's
on with
exactly what
aliens?
we're
But my
talking
thing,
about.
leads me to
You're
believe more
100%
likely
right.
that it's a government type thing because the government's releasing it all now. So I would
Right.
I lean more towards like with this mass disclosure and everything, that it's one of those things where the government's doing it. The government is doing it. The government's bringing them in. The government is the onus behind this, because or else it doesn't make a lot of sense. Because
Right.
they've been keeping it secret for so long. They have an agenda. What is their agenda? Fuck if I know at this point. But I'll tell you what the agenda is. At the end of the day, the agenda is always the same. It's control.
So
It'll always
here,
kick back to control.
and not to make this
I would agree
not,
with that.
Yeah, but not to make this like a political party or anything like that. But so every time a new president is inducted as being a president, they're led into a room and they're able to look at any document that they want. They're able to see everything about everything, right?
We say that,
Ha-
but we don't know that.
I feel like we do,
President's a
though.
pawn. The president's a pawn. I guarantee there's
Absolutely,
shit that the
absolutely.
president
He's
doesn't
just
know
a
about.
face. He's just a face to everything. Let me turn down my text messages. But how long until one of our ex-presidents, or even maybe even a current president, starts to blow the lid off of everything? You don't think they would?
It's probably
There's probably way more.
such
You
a
got to think about the fact that all the
Yeah.
president stuff, they're all part of secret societies and shit in the first place. Like the Bilderbergs and stuff, before they were ever presidents, they were Masons.
Yeah,
So
somebody
it's
just
like,
said Agenda 21.
anyways, all right. So give me a second. I'm
What
gonna
do you mean,
go
anyways? Let me move
listen.
this over here.
I've never heard of Agenda 21,
I'm looking it up right now.
but
when
Think
do you want to
globally,
bring
nationally,
Liz
and
in?
low. I'm ready whenever you are. Is a comprehensive plan of action taken by globally, nationally, and locally, localized by organizations in the United Nations, systems, governments, and major constitutions. Local Agenda 21 is a process that aims to integrate the social, environmental, and economic aspects of the development in order that all future development is sustainable. I would need to read a full ass article about it. You back, Pat?
yeah. All right. So we're gonna pull Liz in now, and
Yeah,
we're gonna
yeah.
do some introductions, and then we're gonna get this party started.
All right, let's do
You want
this.
me to slide her
Go
over?
ahead. Whoever.
Yeah, slide her in.
All right.
Hey, Liz. Good afternoon. Good evening. How are you? Happy Friday.
Good evening. Happy Friday to you.
Thanks. Welcome to the Paradox Collective.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank you.
here with, yeah, no problem. I'm here with Justin and Brian, obviously. Why don't you, hello to everybody. Tell us a little bit about yourself aside from your story. Kind of give us a little bit of background on you, if you don't mind, and then we're gonna jump in and have you kind of go through a little bit about what happened, and then we'll kind of talk to you a little bit, dissect it, maybe ask questions as we go.
Yeah, sure. General information. My name is Liz. I'm from Brooklyn, New York.
Shout out.
Yeah.
Brooklyn.
And I'm in my early 30s, and I don't know. That's my demographic information. I don't.
Nice, good time. So do you
Perfect.
still live in the same area you grew up in, or have you moved around a lot, or?
Yeah, I lived in a couple of different places, and then I eventually, like, I'm not in the same neighborhood anymore,
I gotcha.
but I'm still in Brooklyn.
I
So
gotcha. Okay, all right. So you said you had a situation was a close encounter of the second kind, is for what I'm familiar with. Is that correct?
that is correct.
Okay. How old were you when this happened? Was this recently, a long time ago?
It was a long time ago. It was I was around 4 years
Okay.
old. Yeah, 4 or
All
5 years old. Before I was entering kindergarten.
Okay. Set the stage for us. What happened?
Right. So to paint a picture, this happened in Bensonhurst, which is a neighborhood in South Brooklyn, and there's like city blocks. It's it's square. The neighborhood is also relatively close to the bay, and right right across the street, pretty much catty-cornered from where I was, is actually this Revolutionary era graveyard, which I think is, one, the graveyard's really cool, and two, it's kind of like an interesting touch, and I think it's one of the things that makes it very memorable is just kind of the setting where it took place.
Okay.
But where I was, uh, it was myself, my twin sister, and my mother. My mother had brought us to her friend's house for her friend's birthday. It was an outside barbecue, and there is a backyard that, with I guess like kind of a lawn that goes from the back of the house to the side and to the front with a brick wall around to shield the house from the corner in the street. And so that's where I was. It was about early evening. So, and this was summertime. So I'm going to say maybe about 8 o'clock when the sun was about to set.
Okay. And this was, so you said it was about 8 o'clock. It was the evening time. You were young. Were you playing outside? Like, what were you doing? What were you doing at that point? Were you in the backyard? Were you looking at the graveyard, or what was what were you guys doing? Who was with you?
So I remember there was not a lot of children at this outside barbecue. My sister was off doing her own thing, and I was off doing my own thing as well. I was just, walking around and eating cheese doodles and like going in between the adults and just trying to, entertain myself, essentially. And while I'm doing that, I suddenly felt everything get very, very cold. And I look around and all the adults around me, everyone just it was almost like you hit pause and people had like their drinks like halfway up to their mouths or like in mid speech, and everyone was just, it seemed like everyone was completely frozen in time. And it was very, very quiet. And then I looked up and I saw the underside of a craft hovering very, very close above the roof of this house, of the backyard that I was in.
When you say close, how close?
It was close enough where it was right above the roof and I was able to see the lights. It was incredibly close up. I don't know, just think of...
I didn't need like an exact like length or anything like that. Like, was it like hovering directly above the roof? Was it a little bit elevated from the roof?
It was hovering directly above the roof.
Okay.
How big was it?
It was a little bit longer than the standard length of of that house, like a standard, I don't know. I don't know. It was like a third of an avenue block, I guess you could say.
30, 40, maybe 50 feet long at the most. So now, do you remember how you felt? Like when you looked up, you said it got real quiet. Did you mean like there was no birds, no normal sound? It was just like all of a sudden, it was quiet. Like, were you afraid? Did you feel any kind of like maybe some type of pressure, in your psychic, or maybe in your body itself, or like what even caused you to really look up? Did you see the shadow, or?
Well, the UFO was blocking the light, and when everything got cold and it just like, you're gonna notice something, a disruption kind of above you, and you look up.
Did everybody look up? Everybody saw it, or would you feel like
No,
you
they
were
were
the only
frozen.
one?
Oh,
They were frozen.
Saw it.
So you were able to move, but nobody else was.
That's right.
Huh. So do you think it was because of your age, or?
I mean, that's a good guess. The only thing that we can do is speculate.
All right. How old is your sister compared to you? Are you older or younger?
She's my twin sister.
She's your twin. So if it was age related, wouldn't it have affected her as well?
Have you talked
Well,
to her? Did she see it?
well, that's the thing. There was only one other person who has the same story as me, and that's my sister.
Huh.
Awesome.
Oh,
Oh, so she remembers it
Association with-
too.
That's
or
so cool.
association with twins.
Could be that, yeah. So none of the adults remember seeing it. They don't remember seeing the thing at all.
Oh.
No, not at all.
Huh.
I remember after, well, you know, I saw it, I remember seeing it, and then everything began to warm up again. And then I suddenly just remember it being, you know, brighter out and everyone moving again like nothing happened. And I didn't see like the craft like zoom off or anything. It was just like it was there and then it wasn't. And I remember going up to my mother afterward and, you know, kind of tugging her on the sleeve and telling her. And my mother, you know, just said something on the lines of, I'm being silly, I'm imagining things like, you know, like, why are you telling me this? This is like ridiculous. My mother's also a very, you know, I grew up in a very
George,
Catholic,
I'll ask that.
so
Sorry.
so yeah, I grew up in a very Catholic house, so it's not, you know, this wasn't exactly a topic that, you know, bounced around when I was, you know, very young.
Hey Liz, before you move
So-
on to that particular
George, I'll ask that afterwards.
or a different event, do
After.
you remember like any like color or like if it had like ridges or was it
Yeah,
smooth or
describe the craft. Do you
um,
remember it? Or?
said like zero sound?
There was zero
completely, right?
sound. It was completely smooth, except for a ring of lights on the bottom, and those were kind of like amberish yellow lights.
Was
they
that
moving?
yeah?
Were
Was
the lights
it
moving at all, or was everything pretty much frozen? It was more like were you looking at a photograph?
No, the lights were they were moving. They were like kind of like pulsing a little bit.
Huh.
Was it more? Did it look like it was pulsing because they were standing still, stationary, pulsing, or was it because they were spinning so fast that it made it look like they were stationary? Like you ever look at a fan, and if when it's spinning so fast, sometimes it'll look like it's just standing still.
That's a great question, and honestly, I couldn't tell you. I'll be honest. I don't know. I just remember them. Just it looked like they were pulsing. So
Okay.
So
You know how like Bob Lazar described like the whole like positive negative movement thing, how he was describing how an aircraft would move. Don't you think if you would be under the aircraft you would feel something or maybe
what
nothing?
she's
I don't
describing
know.
sounds
like
what
wild.
she's describing sounds a lot like what we've people have explored with the idea of quote unquote aliens in the past. It's time dilation. To where when she said there was a point where
Guys,
she
everybody,
looked up and she
share
saw
this,
thing.
like this, get this shit out.
Everybody
The
else-
truth
and
is
she
out
had the
there.
realization
We're gonna
that
get
everybody
down to
else
the
was
bottom of
frozen.
this. You guys hear
Yeah.
me?
She was still
Share this shit
moving.
out.
And then, like she said, it was there and then it wasn't. You know,
And how long did it
a lot
hover?
of time. Hold on, Justin.
Mhm.
So a lot of times, like with these situations, when we talk about aliens and when people are describing situations where they see things and they disappear, it's very common where people say either it moved away so fast or it was there and then it wasn't, and things are disturbed, like you said, where there's the lack of sound or whatever, and people think that's either time dilation or a
Right.
consequence of moving in and out of dimensions. What were you saying, Justin?
Right.
So from the moment when you realized everybody was frozen, and you noticed that there was the craft above the house, how much time elapsed before it was gone?
oh boy, it felt like it was only a moment, like maybe you know, like maybe a minute tops. It was just very kind of me looking around, noticing everyone was frozen. Seeing this thing above me, just kind of staring at it. I wasn't afraid. I was just very kind of curious and kind of in awe. It was a curiosity, really. I wasn't scared or anything like that. I was just very, like, just kind of engrossed in it. Just like, oh,
Right.
what is that? And,
So I have an assumption, and it's based on all the videos that I've seen and all the documentation that I've seen. Is when people capture things like this on video, or they recall their situation when they've noticed things, it's not there for that long. And like it always makes me question is like, is this stuff happening all the time? It's just they're not staying still long enough for us to properly document them, And if that's the case, then what are they doing? And it's really interesting that it was only you and your twin sister.
Mhm.
I'm gonna do more research on it and see about the relation of twins and UFO sightings or any encounters.
To bring up
Go ahead, Brian.
Like a time thing is like relative to us. So if you had the ability to travel interdimensionally, the time stamp is only relative to us. So what could have been a minute or two to us could have been
They could have got
way
they could have
more
got out, went to
Right.
their
to other
house, got
beings.
back in in their little craft. They could
Yeah.
have had a 30-minute mission digging something up. I don't know. You know, it's just what you're describing as well, because like I said, I've done a little bit of research, especially recently, and it's a theme that we it's an interesting theme that you bring up, that you talk about the adults were frozen, because there's a common phenomena people talk about, sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
And there's, from time to time, commonly, I don't want to say all the time, but I mean it's common that sleep paralysis is associated with, visits at night or whatever from aliens, and this is something that's documented. People talk about it all the time. And I was just,
Mhm.
and you makes you think that, because it's a lot of times it's kids, they see the stuff or whatever. It makes you think that, if you were, the family was laying in bed and this thing was above your house doing whatever it was, would you have suffered the sleep paralysis? Maybe that's what you're, maybe it's a kind of a same type of thing, to where, it'd be interesting to get all the adults together who were there at that situation and really grill them and see if they remember anything out of the ordinary that night at all. They remember something, they were, something was in their hand and then it wasn't, or something like that, just to kind of see as far as like how that relates with your experience, you and your twin sister's experience, and whether it had something to do with, maybe I don't know, like you said, there weren't a lot of kids there. I don't know if you guys were the only children. Maybe if there were other children, like you said, you were 4, so
Right.
if there was 3 or 2-year-olds or 1 years old, they're not going to remember, you know
Well, if you
5
look at how Hollywood depicts encounters, right? In every alien movie, it's usually the children that have the sightings and the interactions, not the adults, until the end of the movie or whatever the case is. And
That's I don't know if, and that's something that's interesting too that you bring up, Justin, because that's a couple of things. Number one, I think it's partially a plot driver for, because nobody's gonna believe the kids, but then at the same time,
Hollywood, yeah.
Paranormal research has found that kids seem to be more susceptible to things like that,
Yeah.
and more sensitive. Like, for instance, like when you're, I, I don't know how many stories I've heard about people talking, like children talking to ghosts or
Yeah.
things in their room. I remember my sister having, like, I never had this, but I know a lot of kids too. And I don't know if it's a thing or whatever it is, but having an imaginary friend that they swear is real or whatever. I mean, I don't know, like, if that's a spirit or if that's literally just their imagination, because I never had that, so I can't really testify to that. And
I don't think
my
I
sister,
did either.
Also,
my
I
like,
sister,
don't.
if they're able to recall like their past lives, but then after like a certain age, they don't remember that at all.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the same type of thing. Or like, I was reading a story, or I was listening to a story recently about a girl who had, when she was young, like real young, like 5 or 6, had a friend who had red hair, and they're like best friends or whatever, really close to the family. And that, unfortunately, that girl passed away to some kind of cancer or something. And then, like, when that girl grew up, she had a kid, and then one day her kid was talking to somebody in the room or whatever, nobody was home, and she went and asked what was going on, and whoever that person was, the child was like, "Oh, your friend told me to tell you that, she's fine, and she's okay now." And she was like, "Who's my friend?" She's like, "Oh, your redheaded friend who was in the hospital." And so apparently the mother made the connection because she didn't have any other redhead friends, and it was like, and that's the type of stuff, it really makes you wonder about, like, just being young, and like, are we scared as kids of the dark and stuff like that because we're kids and we don't know any better, or is it because we're sensitive to the things that are there, that are actually there? Like we had a long discussion, Liz, recently with another gentleman who was going to be a guest on the show, who unfortunately had some mental health problems. He wasn't able to. Who was harassed for years by a shadow like a shadow person. And then once he got and once he got to the age, he was, whatever, 15, 16, maybe a little bit older, like it stopped. But like it was in his room, it was like on him. It was he said he felt like it was feeding on his fear and that it was pleased with that. And like and like I said, I have actually not firsthand but secondhand experience with a friend of mine from the past who also had a shadow person. He was a grown man, like in his 50s or 60s, and this thing had been following him since he was like 19 or 20, like through
Oh my goodness.
across from Michigan to North Carolina all the way down to Florida. And it's funny, when I met him, he had just moved into the apartment close to where I lived, and we were talking about it. He had his EVP monitor and everything, and he even said, he's like, "Oh yeah, he hasn't showed up yet, but he will." And then it was like, I don't know, maybe he had been living in the apartment for 3 or 4 months, and he said, "Oh yeah, he's here now." And like, she even showed me, like, I haven't been shown enough proof to really believe in ghosts and stuff like that, but he pulled his EVP thing out and pointed in the corner, and it did its little beeping thing. But like, so it's like, it's interesting that you had that experience at a young age, and how unique it is to where you were surrounded by people and they didn't they didn't register it or whatever, and your mom thought you were being, just making up stories as kids do. It'd be interesting to. Have you spoken to anybody else?
I don't think that's true,
in your
George.
life that's had a similar experience.
I don't
Have you
think
had any
everybody's
experiences
delusional.
since then. Anything like that, or your sister has, or it was just that one, Liz?
I have not had an experience like that since then.
Uh-huh.
I didn't even know that my sister had this experience until years later. I was, maybe in junior high.
I think it's
And
easier for a
was talking
doctor to
to my sister and I
diagnose you with
said,
those.
"Oh yeah, like
rather
remember
than
that house on
admit
the
that it
corner
could
that we went
possibly
to that
be
party?
real.
I saw a UFO there." And then my sister said, "I saw it too." Like, until that point, I had no idea that
It's so wild.
we had the same. And
Yeah,
we're
that's really weird.
different people. My sister is very, you wouldn't. If we're going to talk about like stereotypes of people who are into aliens and stuff, like my sister is like a teacher. She's very straight laced. Like, she's not into any of that, and she's just like, "No, this is what I saw. Like, it's just what it is."
That's one of those things you don't tell everybody, though, especially like with your, like, if you run around telling people that you've seen aliens when you were a kid, or that you're seeing stuff, little green men, it doesn't go well for you in your professional life. So I can understand why just people in general kind of keep that stuff for themselves. But it's crazy that, like, that just kind of goes to show that there's probably more of these situations happening, than most people will talk about. And honestly, that's the kind Liz, you and like anybody else who's had these type of experience are the people that we want to talk to. So we want to kind of put some kind of a face to a real face and a real personality to some of these stories,
Right.
so people can understand that, hey, these are just, you're like, you haven't, you're not talking to yourself, Liz. You're not, there's nothing weird going on, but we don't hear screams of ghosts in the background or nothing crazy. Like, you, as far as I'm concerned, you're a normal person.
I think the kid
You
saw
know?
something that he can't
And-
explain, and he's genuinely
Who knows?
scared.
We all have our problems.
And because he's
But,
scared, he
that's
wanted to
the
try
thing.
to
It's
be
like,
honest to you, so
we
you would
talk to-
protect him.
There's people probably
Yeah,
Maybe.
every day.
That
Go
was
ahead.
one of the reasons why I
Aliens
was
are
actually
real.
discussing this with my
Gambo, we
boyfriend
need you
earlier.
on our
and
show.
I'm going to go on the show, and I told him, I was like, I'm worried about how I'm going to come off because it's a wild story.
Gambo,
But,
don't
it's like, it
all
still
caps
happened
it.
to me. This isn't like, if I was lying, this is a very long con that I'm playing.
Right,
It's just
facts.
There's no payoff for you.
Yeah.
There's no
There's
payoff
no
for you.
You know
Yeah.
what? I'm gonna lie and tell this story for 30 plus years until I could be on the Paradox Collective.
exactly. That was my goal all along.
You're at your zenith now. You've made it.
I wanna, because what really draws me to this story is the fact that it was only you and your twin sister. If I ask Brian right now, who are aliens? What is your response, Brian? What do you always say? We're the aliens, right? And we had this conversation about that they're coming down here and they're looking at us as aliens, and not to say like you and your sister being twins doesn't make you any freaks of nature or anything like that, right? But if they
Mhm.
were to come down here and be studying us, you two would be the prime example of what an alien would be in their eyes.
Possibly, sure.
Be-
I mean,
Kind of rude,
you
but
can say. I
okay.
mean, there's so many
Do you
theories
think that
about.
was rude? I don't think it was
Kidding. I'm
rude.
kidding.
Oh,
I'm kidding.
okay.
No. It's yeah. There's a lot of theories about like the psychic abilities of twins and all of that.
Right.
I don't subscribe to that, but it's definitely. I mean, I would hope that the aliens would be smart enough to not like pull a Mengele or anything and just
Ooh.
like pick up
I've
some
been
twins.
trying so hard to avoid Mengele jokes because of the twin things. I figure it was too. I thought it was too dark, but I like
Oh.
that. Yeah, yeah. I was like, when I was gonna ask, like, oh, you guys were twins? Do you think the aliens were trying to Mengele you? But I didn't want to. I didn't want to go there because that's kind of a dark joke. But yeah, I like the fact that you brought that up. I like the cut of your jib. It's funny, kind of funny. Dark, but good.
Like, yeah,
Yeah, but it's interesting. With the whole situation, like you said, with I don't know if it's necessarily the twins or if it's the age thing. Because I mean, like, if they're really here and they're intelligent and they're, if they're for the most part, and it's not like they're popping up everywhere, showing themselves to everybody all the time, every 24/7. If they pop out.
I've been like I've given this a lot of thought, and I mean the way like I stoically kind of like took it in stride, and I always kind of had this story with me forever, and it was like something that's very just like, oh yeah, this is what happened to me and that's it. If something like that happened to me today and everyone froze and I noticed and I looked up and I saw this, I would like flip my shit. I would freak the hell out. I would definitely not take it as well as I did when I was a child.
Right. So did it have any lingering effects like directly after the encounter? Did you feel any type of way after the craft like hovered away or wherever it went?
Were you sick the next day or anything like that?
I can't remember anything like that. There are some weird things. Like I have a very vivid recurring dreams that I had after that encounter. I'm not sure if the two are related, but
What's the dream about, if you don't mind?
So when I was younger after this encounter, I would have the same recurring dream of it was kind of like a helicopter that would so in this area of South Brooklyn, like everyone has like this idea of New York City and it's just like skyscrapers, but in this area of South Brooklyn, like everyone does have like backyards and stuff. So it landed in my backyard, this helicopter thing, and then like this hatch opens and this other kind of like little when I was a kid, I was like, it's a mini helicopter. Like it just kind of like came out and then came into the house and was like tracking me. And I had that dream all the time, like again and again. And I would be terrified of like I would hear a helicopter and I would like go under the table when I was a kid. And that eventually went away.
So do you think? Let me ask about the dream.
That kind of like thing that was like landing and following me like free. And I had that dream for a very long. It was actually years later. I remember. Do you remember that YouTube video of like Amazon testing out their drones?
Yes.
Just like
it
was kind of like that.
So that's what I was literally just about to ask you. Do you think that maybe whatever happened with the UFO, and then something like they legit landed in your backyard in the middle of the night and fucking sent drones in to freaking study you? And maybe that's what you remember, or maybe it's like it's more of like a repressed thing where like you don't want to remember that, or because that's super intrusive. That's weird.
I really hope not. I was assuming maybe the connection was maybe like the idea, because like UFOs hover and so do helicopters. Possibly, but I had that after that encounter for a little bit, and then afterwards.
It's scary because you're about our age. You're maybe a little bit younger than us, and you're describing what you're describing at 4 to 5, maybe 6, 7 years, however old when you had the dream it sounds like a drone.
It sounds like a drone. Yeah.
And we didn't have those back. I mean, the military probably did, but we didn't. Like,
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
didn't.
so that's kind of that's in of itself is disturbing. The dream itself, the fact that you had such a vivid, reoccurring dream that sounds like what you saw was possibly a tiny government drone or something coming out of I don't know. But that's I wouldn't know. I couldn't be able to tell you if that's related or not either, but it sounds like, heck, it could be. For all we know, both incidences are related and it's both government.
I
So-
wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, it sounds like they're related.
It's like when I know that Bob Lazar was speaking about tech and the discovery of a new element, and then all of that, came to pass a decade later. We are easily, consumer tech is easily 30, 40, maybe even 50 years or more, before like the tech that the military is sitting on. And that's not a conspiracy thing. That's just a fact. I mean,
Right.
They talked about like the laser weapons and stuff. I remember, like, you see all the videos on the YouTube of the laser weapons and the rail guns, from that they put out, and the military puts these videos out. Like, they're putting them out, showing us that they're testing them, which means they already have fully working operational models in places they're already working. Like, they're showing us stuff that they're testing. They have other shit that they're using already, like freaking, like the freaking orbital guns, the things that they drop the freaking rods from space. Who knows, dude? It's just, and that's the thing about like you said with who knows, the that dream could have you could have been seeing stuff, from I don't know. That's hard to those things are the really, really hard ones to explain. Dream stuff, we could sit here, we could spend another 7 hours talking about dreams, what they mean, weird dreams that we've had, prophetic dreams, stuff like that. Because I mean, like, I've talked about this, I don't know how many times, but I had a dream when I was young, and I remember telling myself when I woke up from the dream, like, that was really weird because it was so vivid and it was such a mundane situation. But I was surrounded by people I've never seen before. I don't have to worry about that. I'll never have to worry about that. And then it was like a year and a half later, I was in a totally another state in high school, and that entire situation literally just happened.
Deja vu.
And but deja vu is like when you think you've been here before. What I had was a dream of an exact situation, and then that exact situation happened, and that shit blew my mind. And so, I mean, it's weird. Who knows? Because, like, sometimes your subconscious, maybe it was trying to work out what happened that night. Maybe you saw more, maybe with the time dilation, maybe you saw more than you actually thought you saw. And so maybe that was part of your brain trying to tell you, hey, these, I don't know. Who knows?
Well, that would be reverse deja vu then, wouldn't it? Because deja vu,
know.
you dream about it first and then it happens.
I thought deja vu was just when you're in a situation where you feel like you've been before.
And it's usually related to a dream that you've had.
Is it?
Yeah, like, I don't know about you. I remember a small portion of my dreams for a small amount of time when I wake up, and then it's gone, and then I don't ever think about it again.
Yeah.
So
I do sometimes. Sometimes I remember, but I don't normally dream that much. But like when I do, sometimes I'll remember some of them. Sometimes I'll remember them. Like I remember I had a dream about this. It was like a Michael Myers, like a killer. And like it was just the stupidest dream, but I never forget it because like the fucking monster, it was like a clown. It had its own fucking theme song. Like whenever I saw it behind me, dude, it had its theme song, dude. Like my brain came up with the theme song for the thing, and its name was Mildred Teabag. And it was just the most bizarre fucking thing, dude, you'd ever heard. And it was the dream, and I was like, wow, I'll never forget this thing, dude. But like it's weird how certain things stand out. Anyways, I want to circle back and so we're not getting too far off topic here.
Well, because we'll do that, Liz. We'll get completely off topic and talk about a bunch of random things.
Yeah,
we'll have other episodes of like.
I'm sorry, go on.
No, go ahead, Liz.
I was just saying
you're not
you
Liz.
go first, Liz.
I do still have like weird recurring dreams. They don't have helicopters in them, but it's like it's kind of like a parallel kind of version.
George, this is like his thing. He wanted to do it.
World,
he wanted to do this podcast, and me and Brian are just good friends with him, so we decided to do it with him. So this is his project.
The town and the college that I went to, and it's the same kind of like atmosphere and world all the time, and I probably like kind of go to like the same place, I guess, like I don't know, twice a week, and I didn't realize how much it kind of like affected my sleep until, like my boyfriend is just like, you're like pretty much like freaking out in your dream and just like, it's
Wow.
just, yeah. And I
Oh,
was like, oh,
That's
well, this is
awesome.
like, but it's like, well, it's like I find it fascinating because it's almost like being in a real world video game and like I'm going to the same place. So I'm already
Yeah.
familiar with it. And like my boyfriend is just
Mhm.
like, you're having like these like really visceral nightmares every night. Like,
that's crazy. See,
George, I appreciate that, man.
I've never had recurring dreams. Like, I don't think I've never had that. I know that's a thing that people have had. I think
Yeah.
that would bother me more than anything because I'd be trying so hard. I'd be trying to rack my brain and try to figure out what it was about, why I was having this dream, what my brain was trying to work out.
I only had
So,
reoccurring dreams when I
I've
was a
had like
kid.
Hmm.
I've had like lucid dreams
Yeah.
before.
So I've had lucid dreams. Lucid dreams are cool, especially when you realize it's a lucid dream and then you're like, oh shit, I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
And you try to.
Yeah, I always get excited
And then
when
you
I
wake up.
realize I'm in a dream, and then
Yeah.
I
it's
wake
so much
myself
fun.
up.
They really,
Mhm.
even if you don't know what's happening,
I'm like,
So
oh
when I
man, I could do
when I was
whatever I
younger,
want.
I still do this sometimes.
What?
Is like sometimes when I go to sleep, there's a lady that I used to listen to. Her name is Jodie Whitley on YouTube, and she has this thing. It's like a 30-minute, and then she has like an hour and a half, like an 8 hour and a half one, and it's like a it's called sleep hypnosis for easy lucid dreaming, and like
Mm.
she'll step you down into sleep like hypnotically and help facilitate you so that when you actually go off into your REM state, you actually go into
Cool.
lucid dreaming, and it actually helps. I've actually done it a couple times with her, like going down into that state, and it's cool because like she'll keep you at that state where your body's asleep but your mind's still awake. You know what I mean?
Huh.
It's hard to
Yeah.
explain, but it's with the
It's
hypnosis. It's
yeah.
it's really super. It's hard to do, but it's super
Yeah.
rewarding if you can do it. Apparently, there's medicine. There's like pills that you
Yeah.
can take, like that'll help you lucid dream. But you got to get them for like China or something. I'm not taking that shit because I probably
what?
freaking yeah. Not mess. Yeah,
So
there's like
I
there's
wanna
medicine you
True
can take that
conspiracy theorist at
facilitates
heart.
Yeah.
lucid dreaming, but I don't trust.
I
Probably
wanna
has, like, it's probably filled with sawdust and shit.
Yeah, exactly. Sawdust
so
and
I
hamster
wanna I
shit.
wanna circle this back to Liz, right? You told us that it was you and your twin sister and all the adults were completely frozen. Since that event, any of those adults, have you ever had any communication with them and tried to openly talk about this situation with them to try to get them to whether it would be euphoric recall or to try to bring up some memory of them maybe having some sort of memory of the situation?
Just my mother. Unfortunately, the owner, like the woman of the party they were attending, has since passed.
Oh.
Mm.
My mother, yes, and she's heard the story periodically, and then finally, it was only within like the past couple of years where she kind of conceded, and she was like, "Okay, you guys have been telling the story for a very long time, and you're telling the truth." And she
Oh.
what kind of, I guess, swayed her, she's a very religious woman.
Right.
This is more like she
Mm.
finally decided to believe you rather than she had more to add to your story, right? Is what you mean.
She did not see anything at all. But yeah, it was only like until very recently where she was like, okay, yeah, like you're not, this isn't just a tall tale. But no, she did not notice anything.
It was like no time had stopped or nothing like that for her.
Not at all.
Wow.
Be interested to do more research on stories like that with time dilation.
So then I wonder how more often that happens.
And this is something that I gave some thought, is that what if experiences like this are intergenerational? And I'm asking this because, my mother was always very kind of loath to believe anything that might go against the word of God and all of that.
Right.
Right.
But my uncle, her brother, saw an encounter when he was a child in Maine, and he saw it kind of like, it was like in the distance, like it kind of changed, like the lights changed as it started to hover, like descend above a mountain. and then it changed color again, and then rose and flew off. That's what my uncle witnessed, and he actually ran to adults too, and reported what he saw, and they waved him off as well. And the next day it was in the papers. And it was a
Wow.
small town in Maine, so it was a local, and it was like, oh, like, so that happened. And then my mother finally admitted, she was like, okay, when I was a child, like, also, like, because my like when my mother was younger, and like her brother and stuff, like they would go to like Maine in the summers, so she was there too. And she said, oh yes, I was a child in the bedroom trying to sleep, and then a bright light shone through the window, and that's impossible because this was like off of a dirt road in the middle of nowhere. There's no way like a car with headlights could have come up to the house. And then the light disappeared. And so it was only a couple of years ago where my mother was like, you guys maintained the story for this long. Your uncle maintained his story for that long. And I did like have that kind of weird thing happen to me. Maybe you're right.
You ever thought about, maybe this is gonna sound weird, but you ever thought about, like, have you ever had like a CAT scan or something? And they found something, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like they found something like in your
Like a chip
behind
or
your ear
something?
or some shit like
Like a
that,
chip?
a little rice grain chippy
Don't beat
boy.
around the bush, Patrick. Like a
Yeah.
chip?
Yeah. The old computer chipperoo in the left thigh or what? What's that all?
You know, I have had scans, and nothing has come up yet.
Hmm.
I mean, who
Interesting.
knows?
So then maybe it
They're not
wasn't
looking for it
more.
either.
Yeah, maybe it wasn't they were running tests or anything like that. Maybe it was a surveillance operation.
Maybe your family, maybe something in your family line with your uncle and you. Maybe that's you guys are. Maybe you're. They're watching you for some reason. Who knows? You have to wait. When you have maybe in the future, if you ever have a child or you do already, when they're 4 or 5, you have to look out and listen to them, see if they have an encounter.
If my 4 or 5-year-old comes to me with this kind of story, I will 110% believe them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's especially with like the house that I grew up in, like my father was like in, like watched sci-fi stuff, but he only showed me that, like when I was like a little bit older, not at that age. And I remember like it was all just, I mean, I knew like, I don't know, like 10 prayers, and it was very like kind of like religious, kind of very kind of no nonsense kind of stuff. So in that kind of background, it's really kind of weird that I could make up something like that.
It's interesting you
Right.
say that too. I grew up in
Mhm.
a pretty religious household. I mean, I watched movies and stuff like that. I remember I watched E.T. at a young age, and it scared the shit out of me. Like I did. I don't like aliens like that. Like when I was young, like the ghosts and the werewolves, the monsters, whatever,
Yep.
didn't bother me. But the aliens did for some reason. I think it's because like that's an actual possibility. But I remember I was in Florida. I was living down here, and like I said, with my mother and father. And I remember one night, what the hell was I doing? I was in my room. I was on the second floor, and I heard something, and I saw something over the house. It looked like a giant fucking like a meteorite, like huge orange ball of light with a huge like trail behind it. And I remember because I'll never forget because it was moving so slow that I was able to go downstairs, tell my mom, bring my mom outside, and she saw it before it went over the horizon. We both like I saw it upstairs, ran, grabbed my mom, went outside. I was like, "Oh shit, this is it. This is a meteor. It's gonna hit the ocean off the Florida, and we're done." And then, I mean, it was huge. And then nothing. It went out, arced, I guess, out over the water or whatever. It disappeared. Was never anything on the news about it. Normally if you see something like that, like there had been. There's no way. Like, there's no. If I went upstairs, if I got my mom and we both saw it, there's no way that other people didn't see it. But it wasn't on the news.
Right?
That's the weird part, dude. Because it wasn't on the news. Wasn't nothing on the internet the next day. Nothing on freaking no type of the paper or anything about it. And I thought that was so bizarre because like I know there's no way we're the only ones who saw it.
Right.
Dude, I went through MUFON, the reports there, and the National UFO like registry for sightings. I went through both of those, and I like looked up like like Brooklyn 1994, like, and I did not see a damn thing.
Well, it's interesting you say that because that leads me to believe that, I mean, who knows, like what's actually going on if these things are able to just come in and basically freeze time and suspend people's. So they're either. My original thought is, yeah, well, they have to be freezing time, but I mean, if you're
But-
still able to move around, then they're doing something else, and it has to do with. It's almost like it's weird that it's almost like they're using some type of machine that can discriminate between age or type of person in order to single you and your daughter, you and your sister out as people that weren't affected, unless it's something that their technology or stuff isn't able
Wasn't
to
allowed to
affect
do,
people.
right?
Maybe it's not able to affect people
Right.
under a certain mass or a certain. It's probably mass, to be honest. Like if it has something to do with like physics or if it's
I don't
like
think it could be
actual real
age
science.
restricted, right?
Yeah, it has to be mass.
A
Has to
lot
be
of
some-
people who've had these experiences with aliens report that they communicate telepathically. So I don't think it's if that's the case, then maybe they're honestly just kind of maybe searching for people who have that kind of. It's the same thing with how young people can, like small children can.
Sensitivity.
Yeah, they have this kind of like more like hyper kind of like psychic sensitivity. The same reason why small
Yeah.
children recall past lives is that maybe like, you know, when you're a child, I guess it is like your mind is very like open and aware, and you're able to receive information very, very quickly. I mean, maybe that's a possibility because the older you
Two-
get, the more rigid you are in your thinking. and-
Yeah, not only that, but if these beings are studying, or if they have the technology to do what they did, and they have the technology to study us, then they can probably diagnose by looking through their scopes at a group of people and tell by the shape or the neural pathways in somebody's brains how they're going to react to seeing certain things. You know, that would make sense to me that because like it's like, all right, if I'm studying something for so long, I should be able to at a glance, you know, I'm going to be able to look at it and say, oh, this is going to react this way or that's going to react that way. Like if
Right.
if I'm a you know, a dog trainer, and all I do is train dogs all the time, I can probably be able to tell by looking at a dog at a glance based on its body language or what it looks like, you know, how it's going to react. So now if I'm an alien from space or if I'm a freaking, you know, time traveler from another dimension or some guy from the year 8,000, you know, in the future, AD, and I've got all these scopes on here and my little adult freezy rays or my little above 25 kilograms of math freezy rays,
We got
I'm
the
sure
point.
that I could tell those things. You know what I mean? So and that's the weird thing too. I was reading a story recently about something on alien craft, and the guy. This is kind of one of those more where you kind of have to suspend your belief, but the guy basically he touched it, and it gave him basically in his brain binary. This was a couple years in the 80s or something. It gave him a fucking binary thing. He ended up actually taking whatever it put in his brain, the binary that he saw in his head or however it was giving it to him. He took it to somebody who could translate binary or whatever it was, and they plugged it in, and it came out as something, and it was like a date, 8,001 or some shit. With I can't remember all the letters, but it was like a designation code for a ship, you know, so like some shit that we would use as humans to designate stuff with like a date on it of 8,000. So they postulated that it was, you know, was a freaking whatever. We talked about this last week, a time traveler.
Yeah.
We talked about all the stories, the
Yep.
pictures we've seen of people that could be time travelers and stuff like that. And I mean, like,
I believe, dude. I still believe.
I'll be honest, dude. Like, if we had the technology, like where would you? We talked about this. I think I talked about this with Jordan. Where I think it was. Where would you rather go to? Would you rather go to space or travel in time on Earth?
I would
know?
rather travel in time. Me
I'd rather travel
personally.
in time if I had the choice. You know, like if I had the money, yeah, give me a freaking send me back to XYZ and you know, put me in some Roman garb or something back in the Roman times, or maybe.
I don't know.
I don't want to. I don't
hard
want to stay
question.
there. I'd like to peek it
I
out.
would
peek
want
it out a
to.
little
I
bit.
would want to
It's a
attend
really
my
hard
own funeral.
question.
I'd want to attend my own funeral.
I'm not that narcissistic. I don't care that much.
Yeah.
No, I do. I do.
Okay.
I want to attend my own funeral.
Yeah, I don't care that much.
So that's a really hard question. Like you have one choice, and then it's either outer space or in the future or the
Yeah,
past.
so I mean, I don't know. That's see, here's the thing too. It's like I mean, I feel like I'd have a lot better interactions traveling the timeline of this Earth rather than traveling the galaxy. Who knows what's out there? You know, I mean, we're there, we're talking about it now, but it's
Yeah,
like
I guess I would have to go future and just see
future,
what
past,
happens.
you know, the whole timeline. I'd like to see it. I wouldn't mind. I
Future.
wouldn't
But
mind.
where would
Seeing
you
a
go,
dinosaur.
Brian? Where would you go, Brian, in the future?
I would pop in somewhere and see what type of music they're listening to and how video games have developed and form of communication
It's
and
all snake jazz. We're all
every
listening to snake
technology's
jazz.
got to be.
What
Snake
about
jazz.
you, Liz?
It's
What
all
about
what?
you?
Well, since I'm a woman, I feel like it might be inherently risky to time travel. So I have to go with space. Yeah.
I mean, women have been around forever. So.
They have. Yeah, they have.
She's like, I'm getting off this rock.
I'm getting out of here.
This dude.
I would be.
I would be like, you know, like it would suck ass and it for many centuries to be a woman in it. So I kind of want to avoid that. And then I might be called a witch, and then it'd be a whole thing. So
Cleopatra didn't have a bad life. You know,
No, she didn't.
she was balling.
She was.
I think the Egyptians were pretty kind to women. No, not everybody though. You're right.
actually, Egyptians were like one of
royalty.
the only civilizations that allowed women to like own property and stuff. So that was really cool of them.
I mean, it was better then. At least you. I mean, well, not better then, but I mean, like Genghis Khan, y'all would kind of sit at home. Well, they would go out and get slaughtered. So you got that going for you. You know,
Sure. Yeah.
be the mother of nations, mother of dragons. Anyways, once again, we're getting so far.
We're getting so off topic. Yeah.
So it's interesting. You kind of mentioned something, Liz, I wanted to kind of touch base on. So this is apparently, I mean, you're super straight laced, but apparently you've done a little bit of research on this in general. But the Bob Lazar cut, the deep cut with Bob Lazar. You talked about the UFO registry. So tell us a little bit more about what you found with your kind of your little bit independent research. Have you come across any stories similar to yours? Anything with the time type thing? Have you anything with the children? Have you reached out and spoken with any other people who've had encounters? Tell us a little bit about your journey since you kind of you're at the age where you kind of did your own independent research type thing.
Oh, sure. I really do have to credit this experience that I had because that really sparked my interest in reading about UFOs. Like this has been kind of a lifelong journey for me. So especially in recent times, this is a very, very exciting time because it's finally, you're kind of getting vindication, especially when the Pentagon is like admitting like, yeah, it's true.
We were just talking about this kind of before we brought you on in the kind of precursor. And our whole thing, the biggest non-conclusion that we were able to come to is that we don't know what the agenda is for them to finally be doing the reveal. What do you think? Because it's got to serve their purposes.
Right. Is it possible to be very optimistic and very pessimistic at the same time? Because that's kind of how I'm feeling. I think it's like it's very monumental and exciting for the government to finally admit it because so many lives have been destroyed just by reporting what they've seen. So this is a big step. With this report that's coming out next month, my fear and kind of my expectation is that we're just going to get like 100 pages of redacted info and just like one line of like the government saying like, yeah, it's true. That's my fear.
Well, they just didn't the Air Force released a report end of last year, I believe it was, about UFOs and stuff like that, and it was supposed to be everybody was like, oh gosh, we can't wait to see it, and it was really pretty much a non-report where it didn't actually really say anything or admit to anything. And so what I'm expecting,
you're not talking about the 2017 leak to the Times.
No. There was a I remember seeing that, but then no, just recently, I believe it was the end of last year, the Air Force released a report, and it came on the heels of that the disclosure from that the Air Force pilot with the videos about the Tic Tac or whatever that they saw. Yeah, so there was a report that came out with that, and they were talking about that. There was some redacted stuff in there, but it was a long report, a recent one, and it didn't. I think there was one that came out in Britain too, and it didn't really say anything. So my expectation is something probably along the same lines coming forward, to where they're going to release a report and it's not going to say anything. You know, let me ask you. We were talking about this before. Have you ever heard of Project Bluebeam?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, so I was kind of struggling to kind of explain that to Justin and Brian a little bit, and kind of the audience we have here, and it's basically a fake invasion kind of thing that the government would facilitate in order for some type of control type deal. Going
Yeah,
back,
it's a false flag operation. Like
Yeah.
they've planned that stuff before. I mean, it's not on a galactic like space level, but
yeah.
back here at home, absolutely, it's not out of the realm of possibility.
So, and that's funny because like it kind of goes back. There used to be there's been numerous shows, but there was a show that came out a long time ago. I think it was called V, and it was about aliens come down, they take over the Earth, and they pretty much subjugate everybody. And it's like the Third Reich or the Fourth Reich almost, to where they basically people are just in cages and stuff. And I don't know, and I just feel like I wouldn't be surprised if the goal there with the false flag is because the goal is always the same with something like that, is to to exert more control and take more freedoms from the people.
Mhm.
And that's my biggest concern, is that this is all gearing up with how free they are with the information they're starting to pump out. It's gearing up towards they're doing it for a reason. They have an agenda, and the agenda, of course,
They
is
always have an agenda.
yeah.
They always have an agenda. They do. Yeah.
And it's pushing towards exercising somehow. I don't know how, but somehow
The only
exercising
reason why
some
they're
more
doing this is
control.
because it benefits them. So how does it benefit?
Exactly. That's my question, and that's the sin. I think that's the sinister answer, to be honest. Is how does it benefit them? If there really are aliens and they're really, what do they have? They struck some kind of deal with them now, finally, or I mean, what's going on, and if so, my biggest thing is what has really changed in the last 20 years to where all of a sudden now it's time for aliens. Like fundamentally, I mean, obviously we've had a cultural shift or anything, but I mean, like that's not really.
It's because Betty White won't die. She's coming out that she's an alien, dude.
Maybe that's what it is.
Betty White won't die, dude.
Probably just the information
Don't
age.
say that though. 'Cause when she does
Just
die,
like
it's
the
sad.
internet
I think
and
the easiest, like
everything else.
low-hanging fruit. The easiest low-hanging fruit kind of answer is that maybe we are at the precipice and the point of no return regarding climate change. I can't say nuclear weapons because the Cold War is up. We haven't been at UFOs have been cited very commonly while the Cold War was going on, but after the Cold War ended, the sightings have dropped. So it's not that, it's maybe climate change. So maybe I don't know. Maybe they came to some intergalactic deal. Like, who the fuck knows?
Here is my far-fetched idea on this whole thing, right? So it isn't going to be but maybe another 100 years or so until we're living on maybe the moon or on Mars or maybe somewhere up in the fucking stars somewhere on another planet. We're going to be easily traveling back and forth. There needs to be some sort of preparation and training.
Elon Musk wants to have colonies on Mars before he dies.
So here's the thing, right? Here's the proper training.
Years.
Like, you need to be aware of what you could possibly encounter while you're out there. So they're giving us a test sample. They're releasing all this information about what could possibly be out there that we've already known for years, right? Yeah. And they're going to come out with this big fucking report. And now we have all the open information. Now we can openly start asking questions. Whether they're going to give us a straight answer or not is another story, right? But now, as we're starting to do all this traveling between planets openly, there's probably going to be some sort of encounter, and people are going to need to know how to properly handle it.
When we first went on the moon, there was an audio that was actually cut from the broadcast that was shown on TV. Live it was broadcast, and then subsequently it was cut.
You think we really landed on the moon when we said we did?
Yeah, we did.
Actually, I do believe that we.
I do as well. I do as well. Just wanted to know.
But when they were up there, they reported back like they're here, they're already here, like meaning the UFOs, like they're watching us,
No
they,
way.
yeah, I couldn't shit.
That's so
That's
awesome.
interesting. Now, were they? Because I've heard something about that too.
Gave
Do you
me
think they were
goosebumps.
talking about? Now, do you think they were talking about aliens, or do you think they were talking about the Russians?
Ooh.
Aliens, no,
Yeah.
Russians weren't orbiting the moon. Like, no, it was.
I remember hearing stories about other shit like that too. Like,
And Edgar Mitchell and Buzz Aldrin was like going all out, like talking, like being like, yeah, like UFOs are there. Like they've said it, they've confirmed it.
I remember reading
That's
something
awesome.
about that too. About there were things that were seen and documented during like the Apollo missions or something. Like not I don't know if it was necessarily the moon one, but I remember some of the other ones where they were talking about they could see shit like outside their little outside their, and so that kind of stuff. But yeah, and that's the thing. Like back, they're not going to tell us that shit. It's weird. Here's another interesting. After maybe it was partially that. Maybe it was partially the moon landing, the space race. Probably a lot of the space race. That, but then even back then, there was a lot of in the 60s and the 50s, there was a huge boom in sightings and in propaganda, videos, movies, stuff like that. The day the Earth stood still, all that shit, Roswell. So it's like all that's, to be honest, like we talked about this. Like I thought back in the 90s, when Independence Day came out, that they were just beginning to condition us. Because we had fucking that movie came out, First Contact came out, Contact, all these movies came out.
Yeah.
All these movies
Was
came
that
out, and
Jodie
I thought,
Foster, right? Jodie Foster? Yeah.
that movie was actually wild, dude. I'm not really big on, but that movie was wild. But I was just assuming back then, yeah, they're conditioning us for this in the future. Even like a movie like Mars Attacks, something's gonna happen, and it hasn't yet. But I mean, this is
Mars Attacks is a fantastic movie.
Absolutely,
I love that movie.
Absolutely.
If it was anything like that, I feel like it would be like the best movie to depict like what like something like that would be like is District 9.
District 9.
Oh, I remember
District
that.
9 was a great movie, dude. I like that guy, the Charlton Copley. I don't know. I can't remember. I don't know. Charlton Copley. I don't think it's. I don't know what the hell the guy's name is, but he's great. He's great in that movie. That movie.
Like Arrival.
The concept of that. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying. Arrival was great. Great movie.
Yeah, the concept of something like a District
it's one of my
9 would
favorites.
make a lot of sense too. That they came here, maybe it was an accident. They found a place where they could possibly fix their shit, and they're not really supposed to be here. And I could see people, kind of acting like that, not at all on board with aliens on the planet hanging out. Like I don't know how I wouldn't be super jazzed about it,
So,
but I mean, we talked about that too with us, like as people, humans. If we decided one day that we're going to go do interstellar travel, we talked about this I think last week.
Yeah.
That if we rolled up, if people think for a second that we're going to pop off on some ships, and these ships aren't going to be full of freaking Marines, Space Force Marines armed to the teeth. That when we get to a planet and we say, "Oh, this is a nice planet," we find somebody else or something else there that we're not going to take it from them. Like then people are very confused about human nature, because I think that, and that's my biggest concern with aliens in general, is they're here. They're obviously here looking at stuff. Nobody could really say that truly for certain, because who knows what you saw? Could have been time travelers. But in my opinion, and in a lot of people's opinions,
I don't blame them. I'm sure there's a lot of tourists. Like, this is a beautiful planet. Like we do. Like this is a very beautiful planet. And there was like reports of how there was water on Mars, and how there's like proof of life on Venus, like in the atmosphere and stuff. Like those planets are just like, they're dumps. Like you can't live on them. Or if you want to subscribe to the whole like we still live, like the Martian theory where they're living like underground and stuff, sure, but they're living underground because the planet is shit. So yeah, I mean we live on a nice place, and
I think that if somebody was, I think that they came here en masse. What's that, Liz?
I said I can't blame aliens for like wanting to pop over here.
But I think Patrick's absolutely right, though. I think Patrick's absolutely right that if we went to another planet and there was some sort of life form there, We're not gonna say we come in peace. We're gonna pull out an M16 and shoot him right in the fucking face.
Take it. We're gonna take
Hey,
it.
yeah, we're taking it.
That's human nature. Like I said,
Absolutely.
that's my biggest concern with.
They're gonna start a war.
Yeah, we of course 1,000,000,000%. We're gonna start it. We're gonna try to finish it. That's my biggest concern too with like somebody coming here. Is that two things? Number one, we'll get mad and start a war with them when they come in peace.
Yeah.
Number two, because we'll decide, they have this big ship, let's have them land it, and then we'll say we'll come in peace, then we'll take their shit, you know. Or the second thing is that if they come here and they're coming in ships, like, you know, big ones that we can see, and we see them freaking decelerating into the solar system, you know, outside of Pluto, I think we're fucked.
I think the upper brass knows that we can't.
What's that?
I think the upper brass knows that we can't, and I think they've always known that. I mean, if you're going to talk about the Roswell crash,
yes, please.
Like that kind of, and they've always known that technology was way beyond them, and we want to put on our tinfoil hats. You know, like they did retrieve like bodies from the crash, but as well as one living alien. I guess the term is is EB, like a extraterrestrial biological entity, I think is the official term. And they actually supposedly interviewed him until he passed 7 years later. And I'm sure that they are very well aware that, especially when you're thinking about how aliens are frequently going over nuclear bases and disarming the weapons. There's
that goes into who my guest was supposed to be. My guest, remember the guy that we interviewed, my friend? Remember what he said about his encounter? It was over a nuclear airspace.
Military.
Yeah,
he said that. Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, Liz.
Oh, not at all. Don't worry.
So that's one of the things too that we talk about, from a military perspective. The concerning, first of all, I'm like, what do you you're here, you crashed your shit? Like how advanced are you that you're flying around the earth and you crash your shit? You know, I know things could happen, you know, whatever, you know, shit happens, people make mistakes, but I mean, that's
I had a reason for that.
Okay.
And it was because it's why you see so much UFO wreckage in the West instead of the East, is because the way that they pilot their ships is they kind of use the gravitational force of the earth to kind of propel them. And the gravitational force gets a little wonky on the east end, and there's a whole bunch of science that I honestly can't repeat, and that's why sometimes they'll get a little disoriented and they'll crash. And that's
You've done your homework on this.
I know a lot about this because of my encounter. I've always been very curious. Yes.
I have not actually. I've heard that, you know, in passing about the Roswell and about that they found the bodies and they maybe possibly had a live one, but I haven't done enough research into the Roswell. Maybe I should, honestly, to find out exactly what happened there with that, because I know it was an alien encounter though, because I know they said one thing and then it was the next day they're like, oh no, it was a weather balloon. They're like, oh, they said they're legit, oh yeah, this is a legitimate crash, this is some shit crash here and there's aliens, and then the next day they were like, it was just a prank, bro, we're kidding.
JK, just kidding.
JK, it wasn't aliens, it was a weather balloon.
So there's this general timeline kind of, and I guess I think the correct pronunciation is ufology, but I think that's so goofy sounding, UFOlogy, whatever. So after the Roswell crash, that's when, and they took a live one. That's when the aliens and the U.S. government kind of started to interact with each other and decide and making pretty much diplomatic meetings following that.
So I wonder,
a big part of that. There's I think it's 4 YouTube videos under this one account.
I need a name.
What's it called?
It's like Ivan and then a bunch of numbers, I think. But you can honestly just go onto YouTube and then just type in Skinny Bob, and there are purportedly like that
Yeah.
EB that survived, and he's a mechanic. He's actually like is like his role on the ship was just being a mechanic, and
The alien?
the alien, yeah.
I'll bet you that motherfucker was a liar. He's probably a fucking spy. I'm just a mechanic, dude. I just work on the engine. What do you mean? I don't know anything.
So
about
they're
space travel and
reporting.
our evil plans.
So they're reporting that it spoke English.
It did not initially speak English. They had to like kind of go back and forth a long time until they were able to efficiently communicate. And then afterward, the aliens that did come, I guess they were able to either they spoke in this broken English, and I guess were also able to
I know some humans like that.
their descriptions and their meanings, like psychically, mentally, I guess. Like, I don't know what you call it, but that was the general gist. Just they had a heavily accented English, but they wanted to work with us, so they were, they gave us some tech, and then we let them.
Did we send him back to space, or did he said he died?
He said he died 7 years later.
He died. Yeah, he died. He died in Nevada, I think. He didn't have.
POW. He was a POW.
Yeah, I mean, technically, right? Technically, we kind of.
Yeah, he was a POW.
That's what he gets.
That's not what he gets. That's not how that works.
What happens when you fuck with humans, man?
So I think if the
in a
government,
box,
I think if the government
7
came
years
out,
until you die.
I think if the government came out and said you can ask for one bit of information about anything and I'll provide everything there is to know about it, I would ask for that. All the interviews that they did with that alien. I think that's what I would want to watch. Because technically that's the first documented case of an alien encounter.
Well, I want to know what the fuck kind of stuff he was saying that they don't want to tell us. Because he must have been saying some shit.
Right.
Right? For all we know...
They're all sitting on 0-point energy, and that would completely collapse the economy as we know it. I mean, all the oil companies would be out of business. So
For all we know, I mean...
He was just a mechanic.
I know,
He was just a mechanic.
For all we know, dude, they're freaking...
He was just a blue-collar guy, just living his life, so...
I'm telling you, it was a fucking that was a alien CIA scout ship, and it crashed here, and they weren't supposed to because they were scouting, and the main fleet's like probably 10 years away.
Or maybe they used it as a bargaining chip. Maybe he really didn't die, and they used it as a bargaining chip.
I mean, what do we have to bargain? Like, what do we have
for information?
Water?
Because before that, we didn't know anything about aliens, or maybe we did, but.
I mean, if you go back to ancient Sumerian, you look back at some of the Aztecs, some of these pictures, some of these statues that they've made that literally look like spacemen
about aliens right now,
dude, in space. Like it's insane. Like you talk about you even look at the Bible.
But yeah, I get it.
Elijah talking about the chariots of fire and what he saw in the sky, which literally sounds like a fucking spaceship. Like all this shit, like they talk about the cherubs, the angels in the Bible. When they talk about angels, they describe them. They're not talking about like people with wings. It's like some kind of thing that has like wings like all around it and eyeballs. Dude,
right?
It's weird, dude. So it's like,
yeah, and you look at the hieroglyphs and stuff like that. It's all documented.
Angels are scary as fuck. They're terrible.
Yeah, dude, they really are. And if you look at like a lot of this, like you can go back into they're all aware.
A
lot of these
they're aware.
Ancient myths, ancient societies.
This is our podcast, Angel.
Writings and their drawings, if they have them.
We have a different topic every week.
There's a lot of stories about these types of things. And it's weird because like we could switch gears and talk about all like other supernatural things that have trended throughout time. And it's like, oh, well, there's no such thing as ghosts, there's no such thing as these and those and whatever. But I mean, these things have been spoken about. Like, it's not like they're brand new. It's not like vampires. Somebody just came up with the idea of zombies and vampires and stuff. Now, obviously those are a little bit maybe more far fetched, maybe not. Who knows? But I mean, as far as the aliens thing, it's like I don't know. The biggest thing, I'm gonna tell you the thing that my supernatural the thing that scares me and the thing that I want to learn more about, the thing that worries me is the black-eyed children. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the black-eyed children.
No.
But
Oh, last
though,
podcast just did an episode on them like a couple weeks ago, right?
who did one?
Last podcast on the left did an episode on the Black-Eyed Children.
I
Like a
think
couple
they did. I think I actually watched them. That's the kid and his brother, like the stoner guy
Possibly
on
Angel.
YouTube.
Maybe.
No.
I don't know
no?
for sure.
No, it's
My
you know,
No, I watched
schedule's
the
all over
Lights-
the
I
place
watched
right
the
now,
Lights
Angel.
Out podcast. Yeah, so I've done my first experience with the Black Eyed Children was something that was a show that I watched, Coast to Coast FM AM, which used to be like a with George Norrie, and I don't know if you're familiar with them or not. I tell these guys about them all the time. But it used to be like a supernatural show. Used to be on the AM radio.
yeah.
Angel, I know who it
I
is.
preferred the show
I
when
know.
Art Bell
I know
did
his
it, but-
face.
Yes, it was so much better. But he had a guest on there. I can't remember the guy's name, but he's written like 2 or 3 books about the Black Eyed Children. Years ago, he was on with Art Bell, and Art Bell did the interview. It was like a 2 or 3 hour interview, and he was going through some of the stories he went over with the Black Eyed Children, what they possibly are. And I've done so much more research. I've done some, watched some videos on YouTube and read some stuff on them. They scare the shit out of me because they're like you'll hear an encounter from 50 different people.
All right, Angel. Thank you
who've
so much for
never met
stopping
each
in,
other.
bro. Much appreciated,
And
my
all
dude.
their encounters about these Black-Eyed Children are pretty much, as far as what they describe, is extremely consistent. And the thing that gets me is like how they say they don't have fucking feet. It's like it's weird. Like I can't describe like how the people describe it, but it's like they look at them and they see them, and then like they can't like see their feet. Like they're not. It's like they're not really. I don't know how to describe it, dude. But like, and
You're a foot person.
Nah,
we get
nah,
it, pal.
Black-Eyed Children, they're scary.
I'm
They're
just
scary.
kidding.
Anyways,
I'm gonna do some
we're
more
all over the
research on
place.
that.
Dude, look up the Black-Eyed Children, dude.
I
There's a
will.
dude- I think his name is David something. I can't remember the guy's name, but he wrote a book about them. And they are these things. I don't know what they are, dude, but like, and apparently there's more and more sightings happening more and more frequently now.
So you said something about werewolves and vampires, and you said that's more far fetched. It's not though, because they're actual vampire people. They're not vampires like the traditional vampires with like huge teeth
Crazy
sticking
people.
out of their mouth.
So
They're not crazy.
about-
No, they're not.
crazy
You,
about
have you
pink
ever
and green
have you
blood.
ever been around somebody and after you're done hanging out with them, you feel physically drained? It's because they're literally their bodies are draining the energy out of your body. It's a proven fact that there are people that are able to tap into that and are able to literally physically drain people's
Emotional
energy.
vampire.
Yeah, they're real fucking people. They are real people.
Yeah, I've had a
Like
friend like that for
toxic
years.
Asshole.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think I dated one back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That too.
probably. Facts. I know I did.
Hate it though. Anyways, yeah, but all right. So I'm trying to think here. It's about 10:30. I think we're pretty much gonna wrap up with Liz. Liz, do you have anything you want to really touch on at the end here? Kind of final thoughts. We've kind of been all over the place. You've been an amazing guest. We really
Absolutely.
appreciate having you on. Thanks so much.
Yeah, you've been
Why don't
awesome.
you give us a little wrap up here?
Oh, sure. Thank you very much for having me. It's been a blast. I feel like you guys are kind of on the same wavelength as I am about all this stuff, and that's really cool. It's always fun to see kind of like a kindred spirits, I suppose.
And just to go over something really quick, and I'm almost positive Brian went over this with you. You do know that this is recorded and live streamed as well?
Yep.
Okay, and if you want me to send you a link to how you can find it in all of its destinations, I'll do that afterwards. Yeah, I'll do that afterwards.
Send her a private message.
Yeah, we've had quite a few people in here. A lot of people were asking questions and wanting me to ask some questions to you and stuff like that. So we've had people chiming in here and there.
Sure, no problem.
Yeah,
Happy
so
Appreciate it, Liz. Like I said, anything else you want to add before we let you go? We're gonna have Brian's gonna if not, we'll have Brian pull you out of the live group, and you can have a good night. Enjoy the rest of your Friday night.
yeah, I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for
Thank you. What I will say is some good sources that I've seen. I think a good website if you want to learn more about things that maybe should be more widely reported is wanttoknow.info. I think is a great website, and everything is sourced, which is very helpful. It keeps you grounded, which I think is very good. The FBI and the CIA do have undisclosed documents with a lot of the things that we've actually discussed today, and that's always a good read. To just take some time and go through that,
Awesome.
and buy AMC, and that's all I gotta say.
All right, and if I could ask you one last question, if you don't mind. If you were to encounter the same aliens that were in that craft that you saw that night and you can ask them one question, what would it be?
What are your plans?
Okay,
That would be my question. That's it.
boom. I like
Mhm.
it. All right, Liz, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure. And we'll definitely try to have you back on if you'd like to come back on our show. That'd be great.
That would be lovely. Thank you. I
All
would
right.
love to.
All right, cool.
All
Thanks for
right.
your
Have
time,
a
Liz.
great night, and thank you.
All right, bye.
All right, bye bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
That was awesome. So here's my
Yeah, very
first
cool.
here's my first thought, man. I think it's really weird. The whole situation is amazing, right? What I think it's really weird is the only ones that were affected in her situation were her and her twin sister. There has to be
Sure.
some sort of connection there. There
I think
definitely
you're
has to be.
biting- I think you're biting on the twin part too much. I think it has a lot more. I think it has more to do with their mass, their size, and their.
Yeah,
I think it has
agree,
more to
Pat.
do with their. I think their size being small was allowing them to basically not be affected by whatever is happening. I think it's
Could
an
be.
interesting angle, the twin thing, but I don't necessarily, especially with her talking about in her mother and then also her uncle having some type of experience also in the past
Right.
that they didn't need. That seems like her. I wouldn't be surprised to find out, to be honest, that her mother may have had other experiences because she seemed extremely reluctant to kind of even talk about or acknowledge that they happened.
Right.
Not that has anything to do with her religious side or whatever, but just might be, something like that. Even talking about stuff like this, dude, like if you're not, kind of secure, you might be worried about people thinking you're crazy or something like that, So
Yeah,
Possibly.
or it could like freak you out, or I get why people would be scared, and that like a fear
Yeah.
perspective would creep
yeah,
in.
and
I
then
get it.
even one of the things kind of like just to kind of touch on the other thing we talked about with the guy we interviewed, like one of the things he kind of mentioned was he was having some trouble coming back on because he was having some weird vibes about stuff and didn't want to bring it up. So I mean,
Mhm.
I know that can be kind of an issue sometimes with people too, to where they don't want to, you have a really bad experience with some really weird shit. You don't even want to talk about it or think about it because you don't
Right.
want that to even open the door back up to some shit like that.
Yeah. And
Right.
what did he say? Why was he canceling?
I don't want to really talk about it on air. It's just like he's got some
Oh, yeah.
personal stuff going on.
True.
It's more like it's just personal stuff, and like I don't know. But
Hope he
yeah,
feels better.
maybe in the future we could possibly talk to him, but we need
Sure.
to that's something we could talk about in the future. But anyways,
Yeah.
so this I think was very interesting. We got some information. Liz seemed to, she seems. I don't want to say she was passionate about the subject and the situation, but she obviously ran with the situation whenever it happened and did her own research to
Right.
try to find out other stuff about it, which was really interesting perspective. And she seems really well grounded. What she was saying about, like she was able to talk about her situation. And it wasn't one of those things that was hysterical or whatever. She kind of has a grasp on reality of what was going on.
Right.
And it was that's not an experience that I've heard. It had some elements that I'm not familiar with that I haven't heard that I'd like be interested in looking into more research about sightings and close encounters of the second kind with the seeming purported time dilation effect possibly, or whatever it was that was freezing the adults, forcing them not to be able to move. That's an interesting thing that I'd like. That's an interesting aspect that I'm not familiar with.
So and not to harper on the fact that it was the twins, right? So wrong choice of words. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Keep moving forward. Regardless of the fact, like I am focused on the fact that it was twins, and I realize that, right? But you made a good point. Like, you stated that they're able to tap into our minds or whatever the case is. And if they were to overcalculate because they weren't planning on twins being there and they were trying to affect one person, but basically they share I don't know, man. I don't know what I'm trying to say, bro. But I fully believe right now in my heart that it had something to do with the fact that they were twins. Like, I'm not stuck on that. That's
Stupid like
literally
them twins, though.
I'm telling you, man, it has to do with the fact that they're twins, man.
You think so?
I do. I really do. They overcalculated or they undercalculated them trying to freeze everybody there to do whatever it was that they were there to do and didn't take into account that there was going to be twins there.
I would be interested
So
in
I should have
wondering.
asked if they were identical or Siamese.
Well, they weren't fucking Siamese because they were in different places, Justin. Siamese.
Oh
means
yeah,
they're stuck
Siamese
together.
or identical or fraternal, right? That's the two
Yeah,
different. Yeah, identical
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
fraternal. I should have asked that.
I'm gonna go ahead and go on a limb and assume they were fraternal. The reason I'm gonna assume it because if they were identical, she probably would have said that. But that's something that's not really a detail you'd leave out. If you have an identical twin and and that's something, you know what I mean? That's like being vegan, isn't it? Yeah, it's my identical twin. You're gonna tell people about it. That might be a bad assumption, but I would be assuming that, if I had an identical twin and I had a situation like this, I would refer to her as my identical twin probably. I don't know. Who knows? She was a
Yeah.
girl, so it could have been. Either
Yeah,
way.
it'd be interesting to do research and see if there's any other
Yeah.
documented.
There are. While we were on this,
things that happened
there are
revolving around twin
so
situations.
many. There are so many. I Google searched it real quick when I thought about it, and there's literally countless amounts of stories about it. There's so many
Yeah,
Interesting.
that is interesting.
over the years as well. Just on my initial search, the latest one that I could see was back in 2013. And there's multiple ones in 2017, 16, so on and so forth.
Twins being abducted
2009.
or just
Yeah,
encounters with
I
twins?
put twins abducted by aliens, and the
Yeah.
very first one is abducted by aliens, believes their story, and then and at the very first little part that you can read on Google, it says identical twins were abducted by an unidentified flying object, and that's really all it says. And then twin sisters Audrey and Debbie Hunes were plagued by alien visitors since childhood as adults. Like, there's like a whole bunch of stuff about it, man. I want to dive deep into this. I'll do that on my own time.
This wanttoknow.info is interesting as well. I'm gonna have to do
Right.
some research on this site. This is interesting and distressing at the same time. Seems like it's one of
Yeah.
those types of websites. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like I don't know if I want to read this shit. But yeah, it seems like there's a lot of interesting things. There's a lot of interesting things here about the one of the things we're talking about the
All right. Well, since we're probably going to end this here shortly, do we have a sneak peek on what we're going to be talking about next week?
I don't know yet. Like I don't know yet. Just based on we're gonna have to reach out to some of our contacts here and see if we can get somebody get an expert on something or somebody who wants to talk about something on the on the show. I don't have anybody lined up at this point. I was gonna see if we could push the Shadow People guy back to next week based on his situation, but like I said, he's
Is he still
kinda-
open, or is he shut it completely down?
I think at this point he's not in a good state mentally to be able
Okay.
to get on a podcast and talk about stuff.
Okay.
He said we were still free to use his material to go online. I guess we have his stories. So I don't know if we want to kind of talk about that or not. We can kind of talk about that off air and see if that's something we wanna
Yeah, we could always use
I
it.
have astral projection people that are
Okay,
like,
so that's we
pretty
kind of
excited
talked
Yeah,
about that,
to-
didn't
we
we?
did.
We did
talk
talk
about
about
that.
that. Okay, so that might be something. So let's go
Yeah, we
ahead
were talking about
and
dreams.
and for now, guys, let's go ahead and we'll tentatively say we're gonna try to pull in some astral projection type stories. Maybe
Sounds good
get
to
one or
me.
two people in here who can come and tell us about their experiences. We'll have Brian. I want you to focus on that this week. See if you can get somebody lined up. Get a couple people, and if not, we'll go from there. We'll see what happens going forward.
Yeah. All right, so I guess that's gonna
Um,
do it then, right?
Anything from the peanut gallery we need to go over? Justin?
I went over everything with her. I asked all the questions that my chat was wanting me to ask. So we went over all that. So we're good to go. Yeah, we're good to go.
Anything you want to add, Brian from Orlando? How's the mouse?
Just good. Just think for yourself and always question authority.
Question everything. Don't just question authority.
Everything, right?
Question everything. Remember, if someone says something to you and you're not allowed to question it, it's not science. It's propaganda.
All right, and I guess the last thing I want to say is stay classy, San Diego.
Let's get out of here, boys.
All right.
All right, I'll catch you guys in a little bit. Let's go
All
ahead
right,
and end
sounds
this.
good.
Yeah, I'll
All
talk to
right,
you guys in a little
everybody,
bit,
man,
all right?
I appreciate y'all tuning in, man. Make sure to hit that like button, hit that share button if you haven't already. Smash